And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Michael Funk from the Department of Education.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to see so many familiar faces and names from the Expanded Learning Division, the System of Support for Expanded Learning, CAN, ASAP Connect, and so many people from across the state who are part of our expanded learning ecosystem. Greetings from rainy Sacramento. I don't know where you are in California, but it's a soaker here and it has no signs of slowing down. So it's a good time to mix up some hot chocolate or some hot tea and settle in for a good discussion with people that care about you and love to be around. Workforce. There's no topic that has more traction when I talk with superintendents or districts or community-based organizations about where are your challenges with implementing expanded learning. But it's also not new. Expanded learning workforce has been a challenge that we've been talking about for quite some time. And I want to flip it from simply talking about this as a challenge to thinking about this as our greatest opportunity. And I think that's important because if you come at workforce from a deficit mindset, I really believe that energy translates into the invitation and you start to sound desperate and you start to compete with, and you might be desperate, let's face it. Colleague right before this started said, you can't market your way out of a workforce challenge. But there are some things that I just want to encourage as my very brief couple of minutes before I turn it over to the presenters today that are really experts in this workforce issue. And hopefully this will be just a stepping stone for us to talk more deeply about this. But I want to start with this. In my decades of work in San Francisco, we never invited people to be part of our team in San Francisco by enticing them to a job or a higher wage. We were really mission-driven and calling people to make a difference. Our purpose statement at the Sunset Neighborhood Beacon Center was connecting people to their passion, their potential, and their community. And I think that's the approach we have to take in terms of offering people the opportunity to connect to a passion, to connect to a purpose, to join our mission. I was thinking, we've all seen the advertisements from the armed forces. They ran them extensively during the Super Bowl. You're calling people to a profession that's going to put their life at risk. And these ads are so focused on join something bigger than yourself, join something that's going to make a difference in the world. And I think first and foremost, when we live with purpose ourselves, I mean, you can't invite people to that mission and purpose unless you're also sitting within your own mission and purpose. And so these are kind of 30,000 feet aspirations, but I really have found in my work that inviting people to a greater purpose, inviting people to, this could be the gateway to a career in education. This could be the pathway for you to make a difference. So I think I've made my point, but I've seen workforce discussions where, well, expanded learning pays this, but Starbucks pays this, Chick-fil-A pays this, and we can't compete. Well, we can compete, folks, because We're changing lives of young people. We're not flipping burgers. We're not pouring coffee. We are supporting children becoming all they can become. Second thing I want to say is that please consider the power and the potential of an intergenerational workforce. In my work in San Francisco, we specifically targeted staff over 50 years old to work alongside the 20 years old. We specifically targeted newly retired individuals who had 20, 30 plus years of life to give, who in fact wanted to make a difference. And what we found is those people tended to stay 5, 6, 7, 10 years in the work and created a stability and a mentorship opportunity. And the question we got all the time, we partnered with a bunch of other agencies to try to pilot this. We called it Encore AfterSchool for Encore Career. And well, do you think those people can really keep up with the kids? Come on, people. Do we really think 20-year-olds have the wisdom to really support kids in trauma and crisis? Come on, people. That's an assumption the wrong way too. So the intergenerational workforce combines the energy of youth and the wisdom of the elders. And if you think about it as wisdom workers, we really need to focus on that untapped potential. I found that rural programs tend to be more intergenerational. So that's something to look at. Yeah, I've taken more than my 3 minutes. I had more to say, but I'll stop there and turn it back to Melissa.
Thank you, Michael. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Heather, also for the time to ground and get us settled for today. I'm happy to just go over a few comments before we jump into our next session. And so we'll jump into our interactive session in a moment, but after that, we invite folks to stay as we transition to regional breakouts where you can further the discussion of the topic for today and connect also with folks in your region and share promising practices and just engage in dialogue. At 2:30 p.m., our regional breakout rooms will close. So folks will not need to come back to our main space, and we'll go over a little more details after the interactive session. If anyone is posting on social media, we just ask folks to use our tag here, and we can also paste that into the chat for folks. Highly encourage folks to sign up for spring ELO-P office hours. The first one starts next Friday, and so you'll need to visit our webpage to register for each of the office hour sessions. And so again, we look forward to supporting you with that. And also stay connected. We'll add our bit.ly to join our listservs in the chat in just a moment, so that you can stay connected with our newsletters and any updates that also pertain to the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program. And lastly, this Friday, March 31st, is the deadline for folks to complete the Power of Us 2022 Workforce Survey. You can scan the QR code here on the slide, or we'll post a link in the chat on how to complete that and share it with folks in your community. And I'm excited to introduce my colleagues as they facilitate today's presentation on ExL Workforce, Where Are You Now and Where Can You Go? So just give us a brief moment while we transition sharing screen, and Tiffany, Lupita, and Bill, you can take it away.
Thank you, Melissa. Happy rainy afternoon, everybody. Before we get slides up, I just go through, I'm looking at faces. Welcome. My name is Tiffany Gipson. I'm the director of the Equity and Quality team for the California After School Network, CAN as we so affectionately are known. I want to, before I kind of say some things and set the stage a little bit, I want to introduce my people. Lupita, I'm gonna let him pin. Why don't you introduce yourself and then we'll let Bill.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lupita Perez with the CAN team, specialist on the equity and quality team. I'll go ahead and pass it to Bill.
Good afternoon, everybody. Bill Fennessy from the Equity and Quality Team, specialist for CAN, and excited about today's presentation.
So kind of setting the stage, what we're going to do today. I'm going to give a bit of an overview about kind of what I hope we can cover. We're going to talk a little bit about the context for workforce, like how did we get here in this place and what we're trying to do about that. We're going to talk a little bit about CAN's kind of continuum of how we have been thinking about the workforce and the different strategies, some short-term, some long-term. And then we're going to ask you all to do just a little thoughtful reflection on your own, kind of like, where are you right now? And then where are you really trying to go? We've experienced a lot of people telling other people's stories in this kind of workforce space, right? That we have some places around the state that are truly struggling to find high quality people to come in and do this work, right? And the truth is, almost every field across every employment exploration area is struggling with finding folks. And part of that is because with the pandemic, people are taking a really long look at how they are choosing to share their time and their talents. So I want to elevate something that Michael said, because I think it's critical, is when I worked with a couple of districts and I talked to their HR folks about, well, how are they advertising this expanded learning opportunity? And when I read the job description, I was like, I wouldn't want that job either. They spoke nothing about the fact that our people change children's lives. Our people strengthen communities. Our people make schools places where young people feel seen and heard. So really anchoring when you're talking about getting someone to come and do this work, it's not just about getting anybody, which is why some people come and they go. But it really is about finding the right people and then supporting them to build their capacity to be able to stay and do this work with real intentionality and with real love for kids. So next slide, let's talk a little bit about how CAN believes that we have to hold our spaces. This is something that we use instead of setting agreements with folks. And we ask people to really take a moment to pay attention to this, because this will show the lens that you use for other things. We believe that everyone in this space has wisdom. We believe that we need everyone's wisdom to get the wisest results. So as things come up and questions are coming, use the chat. We appreciate that. We believe that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, sometimes exponentially so. We believe that everyone on this call and everyone everywhere is entitled to their own perspective, but so is everyone else. So be open. We want you to hear others and be heard. Notice the framing. We want you to listen a lot and then ask, then lean in. And we also want to acknowledge that there are no wrong questions, because every question makes us think. We hold these as our ways of creating these kinds of shared spaces together. If that is okay with folks, and we actually do this, thumbs up. And if we see thumbs going up around screens, then we'll move forward. All right, I see some. Okay. All right, so how does CAN approach this work? These are the things that we believe. A lot of you, if you've known CAN and have seen us evolve as an organization, that is really what we are doing. We have evolved as an organization, as individuals that are coming together and doing this work. And these are the things that we hold as our truths. Everything that we do currently anchors in the whole child health and wellness framing. We believe that equity is our anchor, and it has to be embedded in every aspect of whatever exploration we're handling. And that's not just about what we do, it's also about how we do things. And if we're really showing up in places that way, and centering the needs of the people that we are serving and really anchoring and grounding in that, then quality will be one of the outcomes. And we believe that it is high quality programming and high quality staff that has the kind of impact and outcomes with kids that we want to see. We believe that supporting the growth and evolution of learning organizations through compassion and continuous quality improvement is one of our strategies to get there. And basically what that means is every organization that is out here supporting children should be a learning organization, because the world is changing. The world has changed. And so how do we continue to create that kind of structure where learning is embedded in everything that we do? And we don't just learn and stay the same, we learn and actually change for the better of that. Next slide, Lupita. So if that's how CAN holds itself and part of the journey that got us here, it's for these next couple of slides are for folks that may not have been with expanded learning for our entire journey. You may be new to us and to this. Things to think about. Before the pandemic, expanded learning in California was already serving over 4,500 sites and supporting over 900,000 students. That is a huge impact. And so much so that it was 3 times whatever the rest of the country was doing collectively. And then the world shifted. Now, what's really interesting about this very intentional way that the world had to change because it had no choice is before that happened, expanded learning already knew that we needed to have a more systemic approach to growing our own kind of workforce. We already knew, so think about it, with 4,500 sites, we already were struggling with like a population that we believe is somewhat transient, a population that usually there are lots of college students. So there's lots of young people who are kind of growing through our places. And so we needed to create like some structures. And so when we did that, we started convening, and I want to, again, we have to thank Michael. When the field got together and created the strategic plan 2.0, workforce was elevated as one of the core kind of goals. And that particular kind of elevating that to where it became part of the structure of how expanded learning was going to grow over the next 5 years, created an opportunity for CAN and the Foundation for California Community Colleges teams to really look at how do we talk to our field and kind of understand what we think some of the challenges are, but what are the opportunities and the spaces for growth. So Lupita, tell them a little bit about the WISC and the WIC and how we got here.
Great segue. Glad to jump in. Hello, folks on Zoom. But like was shared, definitely this field is made up of folks that have been around in many different positions, many different titles, and found their way into the work, but also lended their expertise, their knowledge, their lived experiences running programs and launching states to convene again and to look at these workforce strategies and to figure out where could we go, what could be possible. So kind of starting with just what was outlined in the detailed recommendations for workforce was the WIC, the Workforce Strategy Committee, that kind of published in 2019 some different themes that we could bucket under and some specific details, guidance, elevating new research that was coming out in expanded learning and also out of school time fields, so even larger than that. And it fell into these 5 categories or these 5 themes, which are policy and funding, so increasing the funding and influencing policy that could support well-trained expanded learning workforce professionals, a recognition of the skills they're learning in the field, a data collection system, right? Sometimes we end up feeling like expanded learning is very workforce adjacent to other sectors that might be larger or more recognized, right? Because this lack of data or information to really name where folks are coming from, how they can grow, and who finds love and passion even beyond just entry-level positions in this field of expanded learning. So kind of looking at different ways to collect and reflect on information that was coming out from the field. Another theme that they elevated or wanted to set some recommendations around is economic mobility and success and the variation of models that exist that can support with addressing these type of barriers, right? What can we put in our infrastructure? What can we put in place to keep our staff, but to also enhance the folks that are staying in the field and found a passion. Leaning into career pathways and professional development. How do we call attention to the variety of ways that our folks learn to do great at their job, right? A lot of times folks come in new wanting to experience or figure out if working with young people, working in communities, working alongside a number of partners to advance great outcomes for our kids, ends up coming with a need to call attention to the skills that matter most in our workforce, the soft skills that come up, things that we want to articulate, but also share for other folks to have more access, right, to PD, to intentional training that's through the lens of the field. And then finally, a college credit system. So finding and incentivizing ways where expanded learning workforce training, experience in the field can be matched with, related fields. So folks, when they learn something in expanded learning, they feel like it's not lost on them to go out and continue to learn and apply to a number of careers if they want to move forward. So that kind of lend in moving forward, just kind of going through, is that led to a recommendation of convening another sector of professionals, whether they're coming from community-based organizations, from districts, from post-secondary education partners, everyone that could be at the table to continue to unpack what was outlined in the Strategic Plan 2.0 and to continue to explore these cross-sector partnerships, but what it would really need, what it would mean for the field to start partnering in this way and to start elevating their work and what they do as an organization, their own secret sauce, their own way of getting folks and keeping them in. So that was the Workforce Implementation Committee of some folks really articulating and figuring out what it looks like to validate the expanded learning research that we have, to collect the needs that we still want to unpack from our workforce, hearing directly from folks that work with kids, because they should be closest to offering solutions, but intense recommendations that our system should consider. Articulating a philosophy, but also this focus on an earn and learn model that's even more advanced, right? Something that can lend to college credit or partnering in a different way to leverage different funding streams. So there's a couple area of focus, and I just want to name that you all will have these slides and just sharing some learnings from the team and some gems in the speaker notes too, if you want to do some deeper learning. But really what we anchored, and for folks that went to session 1, they covered this in the ELO-P Academy, is our North Star to quality, right? Where can we start? A lot of folks might believe that expanded learning didn't have a set of standards or a set of core competencies that we want to offer or that we lean in for our staff that are building their skills in the field, but we do, right? The expanded learning quality standards were set, a 12 set of 2 sides. So on the left, point of service, right? What are the meaningful connections our staff are making on site that we can name? But then also what are the programmatic structures that folks have to consider when trying to retain their workforce? Like building quality staff, building a culture of improvement and learning from what the world is now, where we want it to go. So just linking to some core knowledge and existing base that we can have. And then really it just frames into what we're hoping to drive home is our framing for workforce and creating multiple pathways. So how do we elevate expanded learning as a good entry point for anyone trying to get experience working with young people, working with communities? And some were named, right? High school volunteers, college students, older youth, our wisdom workers that we didn't put much attention to, but we could put intention. Building and growing within expanded learning, because we know our folks learn a lot of great things here. So it should be worth keeping our folks into higher career ladders to build their own skill sets that want to remain in expanded learning. But then also looking at adequate compensation, intentional capacity building so that you can implement those strategies to keep folks in, and we'll share a little bit more later. But then also recognizing that we still want to be connected to career options or things going beyond expanded learning. How can we get more sectors, more workforce, more industries, to recognize the skills that you're learning in expanded learning so that folks feel that the years that they're getting in expanded learning are getting honored and recognized for the meaningful work they do in communities. So this could be community school leaderships and directors. We know there's an investment there. Teacher pathways, right? With a lot of literature and traction with folks recognizing expanded learning as a great learning tool and place to build those skills. That could branch off and go beyond to further professions. So anchoring with what Tiffany shared in the beginning, it really just lends to our framing with the whole child health and wellness, right? And one of those equity strategies that we name is supporting and nurturing an adult workforce. How do we invest? How do we mobilize? How do we prioritize the things that are really going to help folks feel valued in this work and seen, but feel like there's an investment for them as well to continue to build their skills? But how do we also uplift those promising practices, uplift what's going on in the field? My dog wants to come into the show for ELO-P Academy to keep it going. So something that was articulated in the research from the WISC and the WIC was noticing that there's no clear articulation of pathways in that blue section, right? Building and growing within expanded learning. Just me reflecting on myself, right? How do you jump in and grow into this position, whether you started as a program leader, directly working with students in that 1-to-20 ratio, maybe getting some specialized skills going into site assistants, site coordinators with an emphasis, the clear role that they play in a lot of this coordination and being champions on site and local experts, supervisors and manager positions going forward, and then articulating, right? We have a system of support and expanded learning, folks that might be in the district level, county and state positions, and how do they navigate that type of complexity at that level, but still anchored in the work, the lens of what you build in expanded learning. So with that, I'll pass it to my colleague, Bill. He'll take us through.
All right. Thank you, Lupita. I think that was a great segue, and that slide's a great segue to what we're going to talk about next. We're going to talk quite a bit about growing your own and earn and learn models. As you know, the complexity of the California expanded learning field dictates that we identify multiple entry points. We need multiple entry points. As you saw in the graph earlier, right? You have to feed the machine. You have to have folks being ready and recruited and able to come in. So we're looking at that in a very comprehensive continuum, of which you see here about the first half. And let me talk a little bit about that. ExL work exploration. What that looks like typically is that looks like a program run by a school or run by a teacher, or perhaps a pathway that gives students an opportunity to volunteer to look at some ExL work exploration. So this could even be generated from the instructional day. These are usually onesies or twosies. No, not really seen as necessarily a program, though it could be. But these are opportunities where some young people get an opportunity to take a look at what ExL work exploration might look like. And again, a great entry point for any interested high school student. Moving to our right, getting work experience through expanded learning provider-based internships. Sometimes these are called internal internships, but this is where a provider will set up an internship program for the students that they serve. One thing I want to make people clear of, because the next one is career technical education internships. These are different than CTE internships. So I just want to make that distinction here. So these provider-based internships, and this graph will give you an idea of who needs to be involved in putting those on. You will notice across this continuum the level of collaboration that needs to happen to be able to do these, to be able to produce these things. It can't be done on an island. So work experience provider-based internships. This typically looks like folks recruiting high school students, giving them some employment skills training, some soft skills trainings, and some trainings to prepare them for having a volunteer position generally in an elementary school program, being able to be involved working with the elementary school students. Typically, these experiences are benchmarked. You know, the first 3 weeks might be the young people getting used to what's going on. Being able to start looking at participating. The middle 4 weeks could look like more opportunities for them to actively participate, interact with the students, and perhaps lead a few activities. And then the last 3 weeks might be those students actually delivering lessons and or leading activities themselves. So getting kind of a great experience and practicum in working inside of an expanded learning program. And again, an entry point for any interested high school student. And I think what I'm hoping you guys are seeing here is these are all entry points and points where young people can move along this continuum, where young people can get involved in expanded learning. So we give them an opportunity to see what it looks like, feels what it looks like, and hopefully be successful, right, in doing that and encouraging them to stay. Next to that was the career technical education internships. If you have CTE department, are you as the expanded learning program collaborating with your CTE department? There's more ways that you can do that than just the internships themselves. There's also great opportunities to provide those spaces and supervision and maybe some resources for some of the things that the CTE department has to do that they don't have time for the instructional day. But here's another opportunity. And one thing I want to look at this is these could be CTE internships that are for expanded learning, but if they don't have expanded learning or an educational pathway, it would also be great practicum and experience for anybody entering the health and human services fields, right? So thinking about how you can promote that as ExL as being able to serve and being able to prepare students for their careers in health and human services. Next to that, you'll see the registered expanded learning youth apprenticeships. In these apprenticeships, the students that participate in those would be able to be a paid program leader and count to ratio. Now, we've kind of worked you from left to right, things that are easiest to things that are a little more involved. Registered youth apprenticeships are on their way. That's something that CAN's doing, we're working on. And that would give high school students an opportunity to serve an internship, or excuse me, an apprenticeship, I misspoke, apprenticeship in high school. This probably looks like those students being dual enrolled as well, which would also give them a head start in their transition into community college or college, and is actually recognized through the Department of Apprenticeship Standards and the Department of Labor. So really a big step up. An apprenticeship is something we'll talk a little bit more about because we think that also is going to be able to retain folks in the field and provide greater training, greater professional development for the young people coming into the field, or the people coming into the field. Doesn't have to be young people. And then we're going to show you a little bit later a few FAQs that now have clarified that you can actually employ high school students in serving in your ELO-P and ACES programs. There are some requirements that they have to go through. We will explain that in a little more detail, but employment itself, getting them actually working in your program before they graduate would be an incredible way to get them on an educational pathway. And understand that at any point that any of these students takes on one of these programs or is in one of these programs, they are now on an educational career pathway, an education career pathway. So we always used to say in sales, it's easier to keep somebody that you already have than recruit a new one. So being able to get these young people onto that education career pathway could pay great dividends for them and for society down the road. And then the last box we have is post-high school graduation stackable apprenticeship models. So the slide that we had before talked about the different levels that one might work their way through the career ladder of expanded learning. Starting with a program leader, moving to perhaps a site assistant, then to a site coordinator, to a manager of several programs, an area manager perhaps, onto a director position, and then on even to regional positions. So in the work we've been doing, we are planning and have are mapping out how to do apprenticeships that would be stackable, what we would call stackable, right? You complete one that it now enables you to participate in the next one, and will allow incumbent workers to maybe go from that are already program leaders to go on and be site assistants and start in that progression. And, you know, as everybody spoke about, we have a transitional work base that's been, or young people working for us and field people working for us. Always been an issue. I don't know anybody that owns an organization that don't always have the help wanted sign out. So hopefully having this continuum and this progression of professional development and opportunity will also have some of our folks being able to stay longer and be able to retain them and hold on to them a longer time in the field. Building local partnerships. So as I pointed out in the earlier slide, lots of collaboration needs to go on, and you need to find all kinds of folks from all kinds of sectors to be able to come work in your programs. So if you look at this graphic here, the first place you would probably look for employees would be your school site, right? If you're looking at the dark green circle, your students, family, and staff. Instructional aides, other paraprofessionals, families, and high school students to complete community service hours could be part of the volunteer piece of the continuum. So you would want to, recruit and look at those groups of people to become some of your employees. Then we move out to the bigger band, which is community, local community-based organizations, churches, senior centers, partnering with youth development organizations to bring them in and or have them do contract work for you. And I suggest that these are some of the traditional places we would look. I think at this point, I would guess a lot of you have looked in the traditional places already, and this is where I think there's an opportunity for great innovation into looking into your community and looking at those places where you might be able to find some of the talent that you need that may have not thought about this, or you may have not thought of to recruit. I mean, for instance, if I was doing a drama class and I didn't have anybody, or I want to do something, I might go down to the theater and find out who might be able to do that class, right? Go out and actively search for the people that you may need in places that you never thought of doing before, because sitting back and waiting probably isn't going to work. So how are you going out there and innovatively trying to connect with your community members to bring your community into the school and have them support the young children that you're working with? Moving to outer band, higher ed partners, early childhood education folks, other health and human services field, how are you connecting with those? And then going to even a bigger pool would be the cross-sector partnerships. So the things you might want to do, and you will need to have, if you look at the list we had in the last continuum, you will need to engage all of these folks if you would like to participate in the internships and you want to do the apprenticeships. These are things and folks you would need to have on your team or have connections with. And that lists a diverse pool of candidates, incumbent workers, employers, providers, school administrators, K through 12 districts, community-based organizations, can't highlight that enough. Workforce development boards, something we're taking a big look at right now, but folks that have resources and ability to help you with that. Post-secondary educators, the government, and other intermediaries that might be able to help you build these partnerships and give you more exposure to folks that you might be able to hire. So we're going to take a turn here, and we're going to talk about the FAQs that recently came out, and there are 3 of them that specifically support workforce, but one I wanted to reshare that you probably saw earlier this week if you were participating earlier this week regarding staffing requirements. And specifically, we wanted to highlight here the staff ratio of 20:1, except for TK and K, which is 10:1. Also, if you have multiple grades together, but some of those multiple grades are TK or K, your ratio would still be 10:1. The rest of the things on this slide we're going to go into in a few minutes as we look at those FAQs that we're specifically looking at for a workforce. And all of these, as we say, is the idea in these next slides and what we're going to present to you is we're looking to be able to help you or raise your awareness of creating increased employment access. How can you make it easier for people to work for you? How can you help get that workforce that you need? And the ability to hire high school students to serve in your program, which in some places, in some areas, may be very pivotal and critical to being able to hire enough people to support the need. Thank you. So the relevant CDE ELO-P FAQs are 16 through 18. Number 16, which we talked a little bit about before here, is what are the staffing requirements for the ELO program? Staff that is used in ratio with pupils must meet the LEA's minimum requirements for an instructional aid. So keep that in mind. They need to be able to be pass an instructional aid test. So keep that in mind as we move forward. Number 17, what are the minimum requirements for an instructional aid in expanded learning setting per the Ed Code? We'll go down and start with 2A. Educational qualifications for instructional aides shall be prescribed by the school district employer and shall be appropriate to the responsibilities to be assigned. Okay, so those qualifications would be Could be part of the instructional aid test, could be some of the things that you're looking at, could be a policy that says folks have to be 18 years old, could be a policy that says they need a high school diploma. That can be changed if a district so chooses. And we'll talk a little bit about more as we go forward. The other thing is in 2B is that folks need to demonstrate proficiency in reading, writing, and mathematics skills up to or exceeding that required by the employing district for high school seniors. So if you were looking to hire a high school student and they're able to get a work permit, that might be able to demonstrate that they have that ability. Next slide. I think I got a little ahead of myself. So slide 17 continued. So LEAs have the flexibility to revise their district policy. So what this means is, and we have some examples in the state, I know one in particular in the Central Valley that's already doing this, is they have decided that they want to be able to hire more people and make it easier for people to be hired. So they have changed their 200 question IA test, which really didn't have a lot of relevancy perhaps to the actual position of an expanded learning employee, right? More of those were created for NCLB reasons, right? Of which we will talk about in a minute. So they have the ability to change that policy, but most of them won't change the policy unless they have a need. Perhaps you have a need to hire people, and changing the policy might be something that you want to look at. And what I'm talking about is the LEA can create an instructional aid classification and or exam to better measure those qualifications and competencies of expanded learning candidates. So really creating a test that really is going to allow your folks in your community to be able to take those positions and provide that. Must instructional aids in expanded learning setting meet the requirements outlined under EC section? How you doing? No, and this is big, and no, because 21st Century Community Learning Center funds derive from Title IV, Part B funds, and not Title I funds. So again, instructional aids just have to meet, do not have to meet that outline, and do not have to meet that outline, pardon me. So what does this mean? So what these facts allow and what it could look like, they allow for a district to revise its policy to add an expanded learning classification of instructional aid, design an exam that is relevant to the competencies and expectations of those expanded learning positions, and best attract its community's potential candidates for those expanded learning positions. In addition, they allow for the employment of high school students so long as they can pass the district's instructional aid test and be proficient in the reading, writing, and mathematics skills up to or exceeding that for the district's high school seniors. And it says it should be noted that the completion of the work permit process could demonstrate this proficiency as an established support system already in place. So we've done a lot of research. We've done a lot of work. We've looked at a lot of models. We've been very lucky to do so. And so we've, I would say, picked up and acquired some thoughts and some strategies that we think would be extremely helpful to everybody out there looking to hire that workforce, and something that you can start doing as soon as tomorrow. And for some, it may be some new ideas, and for some, it may be a way to help support the programs you have and being able to take some of the roadblocks out of the way. Some of those strategies are consistent recruitment and collaboration with both traditional and innovative community sources. We talked about that in the slide earlier with the green circles and bands. Any day you're not recruiting, you're falling behind. So recruitment is got to be constant. And if you've really tapped out most of those traditional resources, I suggest that you start innovating and thinking about new things and pools of people that you could find that would in your community that could be very helpful. We also need to perhaps raise the interest in recruitment of high school students. How many districts have suggested to their high school students that they could have a summer job starting in expanded learning when they graduated, or that they could apply for these jobs if they could pass the instructional aid test and have a job in the fall? Not too many. And let's talk about high school seniors. There's a large source that could become part of your workforce that you already have as a captured audience, And that replenishes itself every year, right? There's a whole new group of kids. So are we taking advantage of the fact that we're in a school district where we can go to the high school and we can recruit these kids and set them up for success? I suggest that would be a really, really great strategy. Provide employability skills and workforce readiness trainings. This could be done with high school folks. This could also be done with your community folks. I can tell you doing these programs in other places, the employability skills and workforce trainings, that we didn't really change any of it. And we were able to give it to do our family literacy and give it to our parents as well. So that will also help the folks in your community and your high school folks be able to take these positions or be better prepared, in fact. Provide instructional aid test prep classes, whether or not you change the test. And I suggest if the test was changed, it might require less test prep if it was done well. But providing instructional aid test prep classes so that high school students and folks in your community would be prepared to pass the test so that you could hire them, right? So providing those test prep classes would be huge in getting folks past that requirement. Also providing instructional aid test opportunities. So some districts, they only do it once a quarter. That means you can only hire people in a group in once a quarter. Increasing the frequency of the test and having more of these test opportunities would be really critical in trying to ramp up being able to get folks through the employment process and be able to get them out to your sites and serving your kids as soon as possible, as it follows in the next bullet. Providing employment process assistance and support. You know, a couple things come here. I heard it a little bit earlier today. Are we sending out job descriptions? Are we sending out job flyers that actually talk about what the work really is? Or that the folks that we're trying to attract would best understand? Does it talk to them? Or is it just, look, they read it and it just doesn't do anything for them or doesn't inspire them at all? So doing that. Also, once they want to apply, are there resources there to help them fill out the applications, be able to help them through the employment process so that they get to the end? Some will be turned away and some will not participate if they don't have that additional hand and a wasted resource because they couldn't get through the paper piece or the screening pieces of those. Providing access and resources for TB testing and fingerprinting. Whether you are hiring, again, high school seniors, or you're hiring folks from your community, you may use your ELO-P funds to pay for the TB testing and the fingerprinting because it is what you need to do to be able to hire folks. You might want to put this in your program plan. It would be a really good idea, but you would be able to use the ELO-P funds to support the cost of the TB test and fingerprinting, which could be another roadblock or barrier for some folks that you could hire. And then lastly, and hopefully this would continue on, but providing thorough program onboarding and orientation. We find in our experience that providers or employers that provide great onboarding and orientation and continuous professional development, past that to keep moving their people forward, tend to hold on to their folks much, much longer. Also, you might want to share what it really looks like to be in the after-school program. I know a few people that have been hired, right? And they get to the program and go, whoa, this is not for me, right? The exposure and being able to set people up to know what that looks like and what they're getting into to begin with could be all part of this and would help you retain those kids, because there's nothing worse than going through the hiring process and then it doesn't work out, right? It's expensive for the employer and it doesn't work out for the employee. So these are some strategies we would hope you would support and some things that we think will actually be able to help you increase your ability to hire folks.
So there's some questions. You can leave that up, Lupita. We'll get to it. That are kind of coming in through the chat, right?
Yeah.
So everyone, California is the local control state. A lot of the times when some of you have asked your regional support team some questions and they were like, well, that's a local control decision. They really aren't pushing you off. It really is sometimes a locally controlled decision. So a lot of what we're kind of sharing with you, and remember, we're fortunate that we have a state level and statewide purview, But that does mean that a lot of the times that we're talking to people, we are giving them questions to go back and ask so that they can understand what are your district policies. And a lot of the things that we are finding is a lot of the district policies are legacy policies. Like people can't even track back to when that was made or why that was made. And so being able to have the kind of information that we're sharing, right, that there are opportunities to bring high school students into the fold. Do they need to be 18? In some places, it clearly says, yes, you need to be 18 years old to manage a group of students. There are other ones where if you have a work permit, there are other things that can be offered, but it really does depend on locally what's in your policy. So step one, and especially if you're in an organization that's working across multiple districts, you need to gather that information everywhere and then have some discussions. There were also some things in the chat around, and I'm holding it because it was the first question that I saw around the fact that there are some amazing young people who are coming into our spaces and who really want to work for us, but like you can't offer benefits. One of the things, and Jeff, I think, responded and put some information in there, but one of the things that we're looking at, and this goes back to having one comprehensive program, is how are we really leveraging all the dollars that we have coming in to ensure that our folks are actually getting paid what they deserve and what they're worth in this space. And sometimes what that means is, and I want to be clear, there are staff that we have that work for community-based organizations. There's staff that we have that may work for districts, which can feel a little different. One of the things that we've been trying to get folks to do is, and if you noticed on the concentric circles diagram that Lupita had up earlier, one of the things that we said is when you're trying to staff your program, you start on that campus. You look and see what instructional assistants, what are the classified staff, or what other pairs do we have on campus that could possibly come and work in the program? Are there ways to leverage teachers working in the program, right? But one of the reasons why we said to start focusing on your pairs is most of them are working a part-time shift as well. And so looking at extending their time starts to create more of a full-time wage for them. And for others, that means that the opportunity for benefits now increases significantly, because you're looking at someone that if they're a district employee, they're now working additional hours, and it may get them to the full-time kind of rate. If you're a community-based organization and you just got this influx of ELO-P dollars in along with other funding, how are you really looking at rethinking this workforce and how you've designed your programs to ensure that you can give your people the kind of wage that makes it competitive and that allows them to come and do the work? Like that really is part of this, that you heard a lot of the work that elevated through the WISC and the WIC. It really is putting a certain level of humanity in how we think about our workforce. They've been underpaid for decades in this work. And now that we have this additional funding, how do we really look at this? And we know that for a lot of organizations, that means they really had to go back to the drawing board. They had to really look at how were they going to kind of restructure and redesign themselves so that there's more opportunity and there's more equity in the pay and in the benefits and that kind of stuff. So I'm not saying that it is we can just fix this overnight. It is not that. And we are not trivializing it at all. But what we are saying is step one is what's the mental model about how we're thinking about our workforce and what they actually deserve. And then once we acknowledge what we know they deserve, how do we then shift all of the artifacts that hold us so that we do this differently? How do we create the kind of conditions where these people are held well and we hold them with some integrity so that they can come in and do the work that we want them to do? There were other questions about, like I said, the being 18. I think that everybody needs to kind of pay attention to that. I think Shayna brought up another good point around when it comes to, and then I'm wrapping up, y'all. When it comes to the frequency of the IA exam, that's one of the really good things that happens when you become like one of the proctors for the test yourself, because you can offer it more more readily. The other part that we're saying is not only can we do that, we're saying you may even be able to change the language in the test so that it's more responsive to what you need as an employee to come in and work in the program. And then making some of those shifts can change a lot of things. Okay, team, back to the last 2 slides.
All righty. Thank you, Tiffany, for that context building there. We just wanted to point out a few of the folks that we know are doing great work in this area already. In Elk Grove, they do a very aggressive program and have for a few years about hiring their graduating high school seniors to start working for them in summer and fall. And then AfterSchool All-Stars already has young people working in elementary programs with some of their high school folks. And I believe there's a webinar that's attached to this that Lupita will, if you get the slides, you will get that webinar where they're featured. And then I also want to point out, very importantly, Girls Inc. In collaboration with ESEPS, us at CAN, the Partnership for Children and Youth, and Berkeley Community College have actually have started the first expanded learning program leader apprenticeship. So that's taken quite a bit of time. It's quite a landmark thing to actually now have one with the DAS and DOL. So they have broken through. We're very happy to have been able to help them and give them lots of credit and celebrate the fact that the first apprenticeship has already happened. And then our hope is that we and others, because it will take lots of folks to do apprenticeships in the numbers that we need and cover the whole state, will be able to take what they've learned, expand from there, and be able to spread apprenticeships across the state, because we think that's going to be really important. And that's what I have.
And
So
just
we just need
passing it to the team to do some logistics before we start opening the regional breakout spaces. So Melissa or Heather, I'll pass it to you.
Thank you. I am getting back to sharing slides for everyone as we transition into breakouts. Just a few reminders. So hopefully you all can see my slide now. It is essential to connect with the System of Support for Expanded Learning, our SSEL team. We will add the bit.ly in the chat if you have not connected. And if you haven't, you have a special treat, because then you can do that today in our regional breakouts. You can also scan the QR code and we'll get that out in the chat. Feedback is super important to us as we CQI all of our convenings and opportunities to offer technical assistance and professional development. So please provide us with your feedback on how your experience was today with our session. This link will take you to one survey for all 4 sessions of our Spring ELO-P Academy. And so if you're attending tomorrow's session, we encourage you to complete the feedback form at the end of tomorrow's session. All right, so in a moment, we are going to open up breakout rooms, and we encourage folks to stay and engage in dialogue with folks in your region. If you are unfamiliar with what region you are in, this slide here will go over the counties that are included in each region. And so we will have 10 breakout rooms, and for room 1, you'll see it in a moment, regions 1 and 2 will actually be together for today. And then room 2, regions 3 and 6 will also be together. And then you can also see the list here for each region after that and what room you'll be assigned to. So in a moment, I will open that. Also, our Zoom meeting will close in your breakout rooms. And so we will provide a 5-minute warning to everyone in the room, and our rooms will close directly from breakout rooms at 2:35. So we will be closing those out. You will not need to come back to the main space unless you need support. We can help you out with that. So if you also need support in how to navigate breakout rooms and how to get there, you can follow these steps here. You can click on breakout rooms at the very bottom toolbar of your Zoom screen, and you can click on breakout room there, or you can rename yourself and you can list what room you need to go to, or you can also add it in the chat and our team will help get you to where you would like to go. So I'm going to go ahead and put the last slide back up. Again, thank you to all of the participants. Thank you to our wonderful presenters for today. And we hope this was a helpful session for everyone, and enjoy your time in breakouts. I'm going to go ahead and get those opened up.